Hello, everyone. We're here to talk about the book Heart Lamp by Banu Mushtaq. Heart Lamp is a collection of stories written in Kannada, the language of the southern Indian state of Karnataka. The stories depict the lives of those who live on the margins of society: girls, women, people in Muslim communities, people living in poverty. Translated by Deepa Bhasthi, these stories won the International Booker Prize in 2025 and have been read by school pupils across the UK in the Schools Laureate initiative. So today's conversation is to accompany those groups, and we're delighted to have any listeners who'd like to know more about Kannada, translation, Indian writing, and more. I'm really delighted to be joined by the translator herself, Deepa Bhasthi. So welcome, Deepa. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, and lovely being here. Thank you for having me.
Where are you speaking from today?
I'm at home. I live in a tiny little place called Madikeri in southern India. It is in Karnataka. It's up in the mountains. So even though we are reeling from a really bad summer, it's still not as bad as the rest of the country. So,
Yeah. Oh, wow. It's great to know where you're speaking from. I'm speaking from Oxford, from my office. And yeah, it's really great that we're able to have this conversation
yeah.
from so far apart. So first of all, could you tell us a bit more about Kannada writing over the last few decades? What kind of context is Banu Mushtaq writing in today?
Right. So, firstly, for some of the listeners who might not know, Kannada is a South Indian language. It is spoken by an estimated 65 million people all over the world. So, it's not a small language. It's not a minor language in any shape or form. And we are part of the Southern Indian Dravidian language school. And we've had, I think, an unbroken chain of literary history that is at least 1500, 1500, 1500 years old. So it's one of the oldest languages in the world as well. And so Kannada has been somehow, because there haven't been many translations from Kannada into English that have gone on to the global stage, somehow it sort of gets sidelined in the world literature context. But of course, that does not mean that hasn't been extraordinary literature in the language for, like I said, 1500 years at least. And so, like with every other language, we have gone through the Romantic period and the post-Romanticism and the modernism and all of these literary
Movements, yeah.
movements. And sometime in the 1970s and 80s, there was a very brief movement called the Bandaya Sahitya movement, which literally translates to protest literature. And it was very short-lived, but of course, it was very effective as well. So during this period, people who were not traditionally seen as writers, and these could be either women from marginalized communities, or they could be from communities like Muslims and who did not have a big chunk of the pie in the literary circles. Um, those who were not um, Dalits, for example. So all these writers were encouraged to tell their own stories in their own words. So up until then, what was happening was it was the literary world was dominated by mostly male, mostly upper caste, mostly upper class
Mhm.
writers who had a certain way of talking about the others. So the Bandaya Sahitya movement invited the others, within quotes,
Mhm.
to tell their own stories in their own words. So that led to a lot of different kinds of new writing that happened, which were not in a literary Kannada. So it was very spoken. It derived a
Yeah.
lot from oral literature and so on. So Bani Mushtaq fits into that period. When she first started writing, she sort of identified herself with the Bandaya Sahitya movement. And then
Mhm.
she continued to write. And so this was a period where there was a lot of social movements. This was way before liberalization of the Indian economy, before India opened up to the world. So,
Mhm.
there was this churn even politically, economically, and obviously
Yeah.
socially. So I think these protest literatures where these communities said we also they reclaimed their voice. I don't like calling them voiceless because they've never been voiceless. It's just that
Yeah.
they've gone unheard, not because they didn't have a voice, but they were not allowed to, be present in the larger literary circles. So they started writing, and we've had some extraordinary writers even within that movement. And
Mhm.
a lot of them stopped writing. A lot of them went on to do other things. And Banu Mushtaq was one of the few women who continued to write on and off, and um, so she was one of those. She belongs to that period of Kannada writing.
Yeah. Yeah, really, really interesting. Thank you. I'm just thinking about what you say about this movement taking shape in a real churn of circumstances, different social and political circumstances. And I guess we could also extend that idea of churning to language too, because isn't this Canada quite a melting pot, a mixture of different types of language and dialect? Could you tell us a bit more about the kind of Canada that Mushtaq writes in?
Sure. I mean, she writes in a kind of Kannada which is very commonly used in all of Karnataka. So for me, it took me a while to realize that this was not unusual because this is the kind of Kannada that we all speak.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I suppose you could sort of identify the Indian linguistic landscape as multilingual, but then I want to stick to Karnataka here.
Mhm.
So even within Karnataka, even though Kannada is the major language, there are many, many, many other smaller languages spoken by smaller groups of people. And even within Karnataka, for example, the Kannada that I speak in southern Karnataka is very different from what is spoken in the northern parts of the state.
Mhm.
Mutually unintelligible in some
Wow, yeah.
cases, even though it's the same thing. And so it depends on who we border with geographically. For example, mine would be a lot more influenced by Malayalam because we're closer to Kerala.
Yeah.
Whereas up north, they would have a lot more Hindi, Urdu, Marathi words because they border those areas, Maharashtra and Telangana and so on. So
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
depends really on where we are located geographically. And so Banu Mushtaq speaks a version of Urdu called it's actually seen as a separate language called Dakkani, which
Mhm.
again is a mix of a whole lot of different languages like Hindi and Urdu and Marathi and Persian and Telugu
Mm.
and so many different
So this is her Canada
languages.
that this is the
This
type of
is
Canada that she speaks.
no, this is called Dakkani. It's a separate
Okay.
language
Oh,
altogether.
right.
So, so when she writes, she uses a lot of words borrowed from Dakkani as well.
Oh, right. So she speaks a different
Which,
language to what she's writing
yeah,
in. Yeah.
yeah. So her Kannada is not her mother tongue. So
Hmm.
she speaks Dakkani at home. So her Kannada also incorporates words from Dakkani. It incorporates words from many other languages, and
Yeah.
also from the town that she's from. So she's from the plains, whereas I'm from the mountains. So we
Yeah.
speak Kannada differently here from what she might speak down in the plains. Even though
Yeah.
we are just our houses are about 100 kilometers apart. So it's
Wow.
it's
Yeah.
it's been fascinating, and that's actually again a very common experience in fact all of India. You just travel
Mm.
100 kilometers in any direction, you will hear a completely different language. Many words are different. The way it is, the pronunciations are different. So this kind of diversity was wonderful to bring into the translation as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's another thing that I was very clear I wanted to retain this idea of this multilingual experience that we all have in our everyday lives.
Yeah.
So, for
Yeah.
example, in the little town that I live in, there are at least, I don't know, like 12 to 13 different languages that one can listen to, which is
Hmm.
incredible, you
Yeah. Yeah.
know?
Yeah. That's really, I think, amazing for our readers and listeners um, to understand that this level of linguistic diversity that is everywhere in India and that is put into this collection of
Yeah.
stories and that you're working with as a translator is kind of
Yeah.
next level, really. So for
Yeah.
Anglophone readers who are picking up Heartland for the first time, um, what did you want to communicate to them? And what do you think might actually be quite difficult for them to get at first? And how did you address this in your translation? I know you've written about the idea of stretching English, expanding English
Mhm.
so people experience new ways of writing, new kinds of language.
Right. So I'm not sure. See, firstly, reading any translated fiction is slightly different from reading something that was originally written in English,
Hmm.
because you are encountering a culture which is so wholly different from what you might be familiar with, or what you see around you, what you experience around you. So, but I don't necessarily think of it as difficult,
Hmm.
um, as a difficult text, because I
Yeah.
think that's one of the reasons why we choose to read translated fiction, or why we choose to read literature in the first place, because we want to be challenged. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that should be the whole point of it. You
Yeah.
want to be challenged, you want to learn, you want to be you want to be slightly uncomfortable, because
Mhm.
you're facing, you get to um, potentially understand ideas which you wouldn't otherwise encounter. So I think that the idea that I'm very against this idea of making things comfortable for
Yeah.
readers,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
because I think
Absolutely.
we have it way too easy now. If all of us have Google at our fingertips, and
Yeah.
I don't believe in having to understand every single word at that very minute that one encounters it. So if
Hmm.
I hear a word from another culture which I don't understand, I'm okay not knowing its meaning right then and there.
Yeah.
I'm okay to sit with the sentence, sit with the paragraph and say, okay, maybe I'm going to understand it, two sentences from the point where I left off reading it. So I think
Yeah.
that is something I wanted to sort of encourage readers as well, to
Hmm.
have this idea that you engage with the text instead of just sort of flipping through the pages and saying, okay, I've read the story and I understood the story or whatever.
Yeah.
To just engage with language at a slightly deeper sense.
Yeah, yeah, to take on the challenge. And that really came across in these stories, I think, because I found certainly reading the first story, there were some terms or words, specific words that I didn't understand. But by the time I got to, three or four stories later, I'd got a sense of who this person was. They're a priest or
Yeah.
this is their role in the community. So it's a kind of learning
Yeah.
experience while reading. It's great. Thank you.
Yeah, because sorry, just to add to that, because I think the idea was when I grew up reading a lot of Russian literature and all kinds of
Yeah, wow, yeah.
different books. And we had no, I mean, this was way before the internet, of course. So there was no clue what the tundra landscape was. There was no idea
Yeah.
of what anything was. But then it was
Mhm.
okay. I learned something, and that's one of the reasons why I still remember those stories or those experiences. And I think I wanted to retain that instead of sort of homogenizing this idea of what English looks like and what English
Mhm.
should look like, rather.
Yes,
So
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, and I think for my parents who grew up in South India as well, reading writing in English, it was also, about reading a landscape that wasn't really familiar to them and that was, brought into their world through text and through culture.
yeah.
We really wanted to have a sense of Kannada, a flavor of Kannada in this conversation. So I'm very happy that Deepa has agreed and chosen a poem to read out for us. Could you tell us a little bit about what this poem is, Deepa?
Sure. So this is one of my favorite poems by one of my favorite poets. His name is Kuvempu, Kuppali Venkatappa Puttappa. His pen name is Kuvempu, and he is by arguably the greatest Kannada poet um, of the 20th century. So he sort of, I mean, his poem is a state anthem. His His poetry is what we would quote to talk about Kannada. So it's incredible the kind of influence he has had on Kannada literature and on Kannada society is immeasurable. So
Yeah,
this is a poem called Aniketana, which talks about, and I don't want to give too much away. Maybe when you read the translation,
sure.
it would be nicer to try and understand what this is about.
Yeah, yeah. You
Uh,
go ahead when you're ready.
yeah. Aniketana, ಓ ನನ್ನ ಚೇತನ ಆಗುನಿ ಅನಿಕೇತನ ರೂಪಗಳನ್ನು ದಾಟಿ ನಾಮಕೋಟಿಗಳನ್ನು ಮೀಟಿ ಎದೆಯ ಬಿರಿಯ ಭಾವದೀಟಿ ಓ ನನ್ನ ಚೇತನ ಆಗುನಿ ಅನಿಕೇತನ ನೂರು ಮತದ ಹೊಟ್ಟ ತೂರಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ತತ್ವದೆಲ್ಲೆ ಮೀರಿ ನಿರ್ದಿಗಂತವಾಗಿ ಏರಿ ಓ ನನ್ನ ಚೇತನ ಆಗುನಿ ಅನಿಕೇತನ ಎಲ್ಲಿಯೂ ನಿಲ್ಲದಿರು ಮನೆಯನೆಂದೂ ಕಟ್ಟದಿರು ಕೊನೆಯನೆಂದೂ ಮುಟ್ಟದಿರು ಓ ಅನಂತವಾಗಿರು ಓ ನನ್ನ ಚೇತನ ಆಗು ನೀ ಅನಿಕೇತನ ಅನಂತ ತಾನ್ ಅನಂತವಾಗಿ ಆಗುತಿಹನೆ ನಿತ್ಯ ಯೋಗಿ ಅನಂತ ನೀನ್ ಅನಂತವಾಗು ಆಗು 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 ಓ ನನ್ನ ಚೇತನ ಆಗು ನೀ ಅನಿಕೇತನ
Aniketana. Be unhoused, O my soul. Only the infinite is your goal. Leave those myriad forms behind. Leave the million names that bind. A flash will pierce your heart and mind and unhouse you, O my soul. Winnow the chaff of 100 creeds, beyond the systems hollow as reeds. Turn, unhorizoned where truth leads, to be unhoused, O my soul. Stop now on the unending way, never build a house of clay. The quest is endless, night and day. There can be no end to your play when you are unhoused, O my soul. The infinite's yoga knows no end, endless the quest you apprehend. You'll grow infinite and ascend when you are unhoused, O my soul. I think our listeners will probably
Excuse me.
recognize this refrain that keeps coming up, oh my soul, right? So is that tell us the Kannada words for that?
ಓ ನನ್ನ ಚೇತನ ಆಗು ನೀ ಅನಿಕೇತನ ಸೊ ಅನಿಕೇತನ literally means well, the Aniketana is, how do I put it? It is, yeah, unhoused is I wouldn't really call it a very effective translation, I'm
Yeah.
afraid. So the translation is by V.K. Gokak, who was another amazing poet and writer in Kannada. So I think this poem especially speaks for the world we are today, as you know, where people are not necessarily rooted either geographically or politically or economically or whatever angle you take.
Mhm.
So this is about going and being out and about in the world and
Yeah.
not being complacent. So at this line where it says "Yelliyu nilladiru," the English equivalent would be "Stop not on the unending way, never build a house of clay."
Yeah.
So it sort of the larger idea of it being not to be complacent with anything. "Yelliyu nilladiru" is like don't stop anywhere. Don't be
Yeah.
complacent. Don't stop growing in any way.
Yeah. So we get
So
that idea with the infinite's yoga knows no end line as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's kind of like a call to say don't be stagnant, whether in thought, I mean, especially in thought. And I
Yeah.
think that is something that we need so much more of, to be not stagnant, to keep moving, to keep learning, to keep sort of striving to be better
Mhm.
readers, writers, people, whatever.
Yeah, yeah, really very, very important. And Aniketana then is the title of the poem itself, right? So it's kind of
Yeah.
unhousing, freeing. Is that in the
Yeah.
right direction?
Yeah,
Not
yeah,
being
yeah. And
stagnant. Yeah.
also sort of make the whole world your house.
Oh, wow.
It's
Yeah,
more.
that's a beautiful way to put it. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's more the idea that sure you might be physically rooted in India or Oxford
Mhm.
or wherever, but then
Yeah.
to also think of, and when you think of the whole world as your home, you also think of people of the world as someone that you belong to and who belong to you. So it's like a larger the idea being treat everybody with kindness. And
Mm.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
all
sharing
ideas
your
that
home.
we need are, yeah,
Yeah,
sharing your home. I think something
yeah,
that we all constantly need reminders of, and it's never a bad idea to be open to the
yeah,
world.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you. Thank you. That's very important to remember. I wonder if you can tell us a bit more about your translation ideas and practices and what you're doing with your translations. I know that you've written a lovely essay which some of our readers might like to read, in fact, online called Translating with an Accent or To Translate with an Accent. And there's also the translator's notes in the Heartlamp book against italics. So could you tell us a little bit more
Yeah.
about these themes of translating with an accent against italics? Yeah.
Right. So if you like with writing, there's a lot that goes in and out of fashion when it comes to translation. And I think for me, I found that a lot of writing from South Asian countries, South Asian languages, sort of tended to homogenize the English that it got translated into. And
Hmm.
for me, I didn't see why that needed to be done because so when I translate, it's very important for me to take Kannada out into the world. I'm not sort of, and for some, and show people who don't know Kannada, who don't understand Kannada, that this is what the Kannada linguistic culture is. Because
Yeah.
when you talk about language, it's not just a tool for communication. It is so much more, right? It's your memory, it's your history, it's your politics, it's your food. It's just so much more. And that's
Yeah.
why
Yeah.
access to language, to your mother tongue, whatever may be your mother tongue, is so much more important. And I wanted to locate this idea of a language in a certain geographical region. And I
Hmm.
didn't want to homogenize it in any sense that way. So when I say translating with an accent, so obviously when I speak, I have an Indian accent because I'm Indian. And
Hmm.
even within India, I have a South Indian accent, which may not be evident to people outside of the country, but
Yeah.
within India, I can make out if someone is from, say, Delhi, or if someone is from somewhere else in the country. So
Sure.
we have these accents, and my idea was that I wanted to retain this accent even in the translation
Hmm.
because I'm not a Hindi speaker who's translating into English. I'm a Kannada speaker. So the hum of the Kannada language is what I wanted to retain. And so that kind of came across in some of the word choices that I was making. For example, dosa is what, I mean, many of the readers might be familiar with
Yeah.
dosa.
Hmm.
But dosa is not a word that we use in South India. We use dose.
Those say,
So there's a lot.
yeah.
Yeah, dosa is a very North Indian
Way of
term. So
saying,
what
yeah.
I started noticing in translations was that we were sort of deferring to the way North Indian speakers were pronouncing a lot of words. And
Yes.
I didn't want to do that. I wanted to make sure that I use words which we use here. And so dose is what is there. And it's the same with roti as well. Roti is again a North Indian term,
Hmm.
whereas roti is, so I spelled it as Rotti, just
Yes.
to, instead of Roti, which is the common
Yeah.
spelling.
Hmm.
So so this was very important for me to retain and
Hmm.
sort of carry across, saying that look, this is India is a very, 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 very big country.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we all don't speak the same language. We speak very, very differently. And so why not retain those differences in the translation as well?
Mhm.
So, which is why this is a very Kannada specific, very South Indian specific translation versus Indian translation,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
would
So it's
say.
up to the readers to know, okay, roti is what I know from reading other texts or having eaten this or
Right.
seen it elsewhere. But now here,
Yeah.
this is something different. I can recognize that this is also a kind of bread, but I
Yeah.
mean, it's a
Yeah.
different way of,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. And again, these are not extraordinarily new ideas because writers have been using these kind of they've been making these choices for a long time. For example, pilaf is something that you might read in an Iranian in a book written by an Iranian origin
Sure, yeah.
writer, whereas
Mhm.
pulao is what we might say in India. So it's the same thing.
Okay.
Again, I think it goes back to this idea of engaging with the text a little deeper
Yeah,
versus
yeah,
just reading a word and saying, okay, I don't know what this is.
yeah,
Because if you
yeah.
sound it out, you can kind of say that, okay, this might be that. And if
Mm,
someone who's very, very invested, then of course there is Google. You can go and Google it
mm,
out. But
mm.
otherwise, I think, and it was the same thing with italics as well. I've seen the most atrocious of common words being italicized, which
Yeah,
which I
yeah,
don't agree with at all.
yeah.
So it's again for me, it was just a visual. The visual angle was of it was also important. It sort of
Mhm.
disrupts it, and then it sort of says,
Yeah,
this is a different word. This is from another culture. So, let's exoticize it in some way by italicizing it, which I was not okay with. So
sure,
just
yeah.
make it seamless and it'll
Mhm.
you'll just might skim the word, but then you'll still know that it is part of the
Yeah.
so I think the first thought I had towards that uh towards coming, when I was thinking about these things is how pizza is hardly an English word. you
Yeah.
know you
Yeah,
know so
exactly.
but then nobody italicizes pizza, and it is
Yeah.
so integrated in the English language in these texts. But
Mm,
and how ridiculous it would look to italicize pizza or pasta or
mm. Yeah.
something else. So my thinking was, why not do the same for
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
no difference. You have to start somewhere, and then it sort of fits into the language.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a really good
Yeah,
example. And
yeah.
I'm thinking actually all this talk of roti, pulao, and pizza is making me quite hungry. But especially
I've
the
just had
pulao.
my lunch, so
Uh,
I'm safe.
yeah, no, I here in Oxford, it's before lunch, so that's why
Oh.
I'm getting hungry. And actually, in fact, I wonder if we can now move to discussing a few of the images and
Mhm,
um, comparisons, similes, and so on that are from Heartlamp. Some of them are also to do with food, so it fits in
mhm.
quite well here. I've chosen a few examples. So maybe if I read those out, and then you can tell us a little bit about your what this means, what this is supposed to evoke in the readers.
Mhm.
So one of them is from the story High Heeled Shoe. So that's the one about Nayaz Khan extending his family home for his brother and sister who are visiting from Dubai.
Mhm.
And the quotation is, based on these, Nasima rode on the horse of her imagination and taunted her husband, poking, cutting, and boiling him with her hurtful words, and derived great pleasure from it. She succeeded in creating a divide between the brothers, who had been as close as Rama and Lakshmana. So, could you tell us a bit about, firstly, the horse of her imagination? I noticed that phrase comes up a few times in the stories, and I really
Right.
loved that image. And then also this bond between Rama and Lakshmana. Who are they? And yeah, thank you.
Right. So it's a literal. So horse of imagination would be, I think, in Kannada, Kalpaneya Kudre, which is
Mhm.
literally horse of your imagination. So the idea is that imagination, once you start on this path of imagining things, it's just sort of starts galloping away.
Yeah.
Very often it sort of it starts running away so quickly that you can't really hold on to its reins, and you don't necessarily control it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I
so
think
it
we
just
see that
sort
in a
of,
lot of the stories, right? That they
yeah,
imaginations run away with them, and sometimes that can lead to
right.
quite tragic consequences.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. So for me, again, this goes back to my idea of how I want to translate. I didn't want to, I wanted to retain the idioms and phrases and quite literally translate them. Because
Yeah.
again, the whole point is, for example, I keep going back to this example. How we say the grass is greener on the other side. We
Hmm.
all understand that. In Kannada, there is a saying, "Durada betta nunnage," which
Hmm.
literally translates to the distant mountain is very smooth. In the sense
Ah,
that, I mean, it's the same idea that you don't
yeah.
know what's the troubles of what the problems on the
Hmm.
other side are until you get to the other side. So when you
Hmm.
look at a mountain from far away, it looks very easy to, it looks very smooth and easy to climb and so on. But it's only when you get closer that you realize that this is not such an easy climb,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I wanted to retain these kind of things instead of trying and finding equivalents in English, because everybody, we don't say grass is greener on the other side. We would say "Dura the betta nunnege," which is
Mm.
about the mountain.
Yeah.
So, and when you read those phrases like this, the horse of the imagination, you learn again. The reader learns something new and says, "Okay, in this culture, this is the way they interpret this part
Mhm.
of life, or this is the way they look at life, or this is the way they describe something." And that's beautiful because isn't again that's how we learn about other cultures, right? If I
Mhm.
were to in some other situation, if I were to just say the grass is greener on the other side, I don't think the reader learns anything much, because it's just
Yeah,
such a common thing in the
yeah,
Western world, in the English
yeah,
speaking world.
yeah, yeah.
Whereas you read something else that is such
Mhm.
a, you see it's another way of looking at the world. And I
Yeah,
think that's
absolutely.
again so beautiful
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
uh, to know
Yeah, and with
that.
the horse as well, I think we get this idea of something really uncontrolled, as you say, can be
Yeah,
quite violent as well. Um,
yeah. And
something,
again,
yeah,
yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut
uh,
you off. So
yeah.
it's just such an interesting image.
Hmm.
And maybe when we are all sitting in, when one of us is sitting and daydreaming and your imagination is running away from you, you might think about this phrase, something that you
Yeah,
have read.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so, and that kind of expands your world again as a reader,
Mm.
which is amazing.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. And what about Rama and Lakshmana then? So these
Oh,
two
right.
brothers have been, who used to be as close as Rama and Lakshmana, and now a wedge is being driven between them in the story.
Right. So again, I had to make a choice when it came to these kind of things because I understand. So Rama and Lakshmana is from the Ramayana, one of the two epics from India. So Ramayana and Mahabharata are the two big epics,
Hindu epics,
and this
yeah.
is Hindu
Mhm.
epics, and these are Rama and Lakshmana is from Ramayana. And
Mhm.
again, even though they are rooted in the Hindu culture, Hindu traditions, it's amazing how these the references from it's such a lived experience. Like this is even though we have nothing to do with Banu Mushtaq being a Muslim writer,
Mhm.
he would still be quoting things from the Ramayana and the Mahabharata because it's these references are so embedded in our everyday lives.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
for
yeah.
her to be talking about two brothers who were inseparable and
Mhm.
who could not be like there was no fight between them. They were just
Mhm.
so much so close.
Yeah,
It's very common, which is again the orality, which is wonderful because there is a sense of orality in her stories. And
yeah,
every
yeah.
day, when we are in conversation with someone, we might use the same thing. Oh, Rama Lakshmana Tara idare. So when
Yeah.
two people are very close, you might say they are as close and as uh, you know
Mhm.
as much as inseparable as these two brothers. So I
Yes.
think these kind of things, and I understand that some of these references would be lost on a reader who has no idea about these things. But I think
Mhm.
that's okay. For
Yeah.
me personally, that's okay if someone does not necessarily know what these things mean. Because again, when we read stories with, say, a lot of references from Greek mythology, which is very unfamiliar to us,
Mm.
that's where your imagination is working and you wonder who these two people are or what these names are. And
Yeah.
some of the readers might be inspired to go and find out a little more. So it's
Yeah.
okay to not know exactly the meaning of every single word at that minute when you encounter the word.
thinking about Rama and Lakshmana and this reference in the text, I realize also how important it is in a country like India with a lot of religious diversity that to know that that a text like this contains a lot of allusions and input from different religious traditions.
Mhm.
So could you maybe just tell us for our last question a bit more about the religious traditions and context that Mushtaq is writing in, and for you as a translator as well?
Right. So for me, when I started thinking about translating these stories, so just for additional context, these 12 stories that make up Heart Lamp were chosen from about 50, 55 stories. So I chose them and put them in the order that they're
Oh,
in right
right.
now.
That I didn't know that. Yeah.
Uh, right. So they were chosen from from six short story collections that she had published over the years.
Mhm.
Starting with from I think 1993 to all the way to 2023, which is when her last short story collection was published. Um, so from day one, I've been very clear that these are not strictly speaking Muslim stories alone.
Mhm.
Yes, for sure, the names of the characters in all these stories are Muslim and they have certain Muslim traditions which they are following and so on. But then if you strip down these religious identities, the issues that all these women face in the stories are across traditions. They are
Mhm.
across castes, across religions, across geographical boundaries, across country borders, and so on. So, which is why, everywhere that I've traveled with the book, it's been very clear that sadly, women have these experiences everywhere in the world, irrespective of what social background they're from. So for me, even though I was translating a Muslim author who was writing about about the Muslim community, there was this sense of universality, which is what I identified with. Like I know a lot of these women.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They could be the stories of my friends or cousins or aunties
Yeah,
or
yeah.
so on, or people
Mhm.
in my neighborhood or so on, which is both sad and which is what makes these stories very relatable anywhere they are read around the world.
Mhm.
So for me, that was very important. But the other thing that I had to be very mindful of was the fact that Muslims again are othered so much around the world, and
Mhm.
increasingly so as we see everywhere in so many different countries at the moment. So it's very clear that I wanted to be very, very certain with some of the cultural nuances that I was bringing into the translations.
Mhm.
So for me, the research part was what took many, many, many months. So I kind of
Mhm.
immersed myself in the translation, in the
Mhm.
text, in the world of these characters. So I was watching a whole lot of Pakistani dramas,
Yeah.
um,
So that's how
which
you
are so
prepared yourself.
addictive.
Yeah, I
Absolutely,
bet. Yeah.
which are so addictive. And yeah,
Yeah.
so it's essentially watching months of TV and saying, I'm just researching for
Yeah.
my book.
Yeah.
And I
But
was
yeah.
listening to music and reading other books. And
Mm.
so just sort of to get into that zone where, sure, I was familiar with these people and these stories, but then to get into the skin of the character, so to speak. So that took a
Yeah.
really long time,
Mhm.
and I didn't want to mess up,
Yeah,
because
sure. Mhm.
that's what anything against Muslims is what everyone seems to want to wait for, and sort of
Mhm.
uh, get more aggressive, and especially the way not just India, everywhere in the world, it's the
Mhm.
same
Yeah.
situation right now. So it's very
Yeah.
clear about the cultural nuances there.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so that was the challenging part. But otherwise, yes, you do. I mean, like I said, these are not Muslim stories alone.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
these are human stories. These are universal stories.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it was an interesting challenge to be faced with a completely different culture, a language, a tradition, which is not my own.
Mhm.
So yeah, I get it, which is why there's a note in my translator's note about about this very same thing. That I knew I would get asked, how can I, as a non-Muslim, be translating a Muslim text and
Mm,
so on.
mhm.
So I have my
Yeah.
research to back me up there.
Yeah, and I love that vision of
Yeah.
you doing your research, watching films, listening to
Oh,
music,
yeah, yeah.
immersed in the culture that you're about to translate. Yeah, it's really been really great talking to you, Deepa. Thank you for bringing us into this world. And thank
Thank
you to all our
you.
listeners as well. I hope you enjoyed the book, or that you will enjoy it and enjoy discovering this work in the future. So yeah, thank you everybody, and thank you most of all to
Thank
the
you so much. Thank you so much for having me. This was really lovely.